experience for 4th grade students the last Wednesday of every September at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds. And of course, because of COVID-19, we had to change from the in-person festival to a virtual festival. And my name is Paula Leopold, and I work for Dakota County. And my responsibilities there include education and communication and outreach, very fun kinds of projects, I think. And so the Children's Water Festival Planning Committee, then we have worked together with our presenters to plan this week's festival. Rather than having a one-day festival at the fairgrounds, we are having that spread out throughout the week. And so we have 9 live classes this week. We're live streaming to the Children's Festival YouTube channel. And so after this live session, the recording would be there. But most importantly then, if you happen to miss a class, you can find that then on our Children's Water Festival webpage. And we would like to have you use the Q&A icon to submit a question to the presenters today, and typing in your question in the box there and submitting send. So our first presenter, it is 10 o'clock, so I think we want to go ahead and get started. Our first presenter, today for this Down the Dirty Drain class is Kate Clayton. And Kate is the youth coordinator with Friends of the Mississippi River. So Kate, good morning, welcome, and take it away.
Good morning, thank you, Paula. All right, there we go. Okay, so good morning, everybody. As Paula mentioned, my name is Kate. I work for Friends of the Mississippi River. We are based in downtown St. Paul, but we work along the entire stretch of the river that is a national park here in Minnesota. So it's 72 miles, and it stretches from Dayton, Minnesota in the northwest down to Hastings in the southeast. If you didn't know, that is a national park. And we work to protect the water quality and the habitat around those 72 miles of the river. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you today. So we are going to talk about the dirty drains that we have in the Twin Cities. But a first thing I want to do is to make sure that we're all on the same plane with our vocabulary. So I might use some words that you're not familiar with. And one of those is permeable. Now, permeable is something that water can flow through. So think of kind of like a sponge. It might absorb some water, but then also the water, if there's enough of it, can eventually flow through that sponge. Now, the opposite of permeable is impermeable. So think of things that water cannot soak into, like our driveways, or sidewalks, or roofs, or parking lots. All of that material is impermeable. Water can't soak into it. We also have infiltration, which is a big word that just is the process of water soaking into a surface. So in this picture, it is a rain garden that has collected a lot of water, and the water is soaking into the ground, so it's infiltrating into the ground. The opposite of infiltration is runoff. So infiltration happens on those permeable surfaces. Runoff happens on those impermeable surfaces. So runoff really is what it sounds like, in that water is just running or flowing across those impermeable surfaces. It can't soak into it, so it's going to flow across it. And then we've got this tricky word of watershed. So a lot of people think that a watershed is a shed that we keep water in. That would make sense, but unfortunately that's not it. So what is a watershed? If you like definitions, Then a watershed is the area of land where all of the water that is under it or drains off of it goes to the same place. I'm a person who has a hard time picturing what that means. So I like to use an image, and it's a bathtub. So all the area of land we can think of as in our bathtub, where all of the water that is under it, that doesn't work so well for a bathtub, but we could say, or in it. Great. Okay, so we turn the shower on, all of the water that's in it flows to the same place. Well, it goes down the drain in the bathtub. So if we pretend that in our bathtub there are cities and farms and roads and mountains and towns, all of the things that we just have in everyday life. And if we turn the shower on, we could say that it's raining, right? When it rains on all of the things that we have, eventually all that water will go to one place. And all of those areas are in the same watershed. Now the edge of the bathtub would be the tops of hills or mountains that make the water flow downhill in one direction versus downhill in the other direction. So that is the border of our watershed. Now in the Twin Cities, where all of our water goes is the Mississippi River. So that's the place that collects all of that water in our area. But the Mississippi River doesn't just collect water from the Twin Cities metro. It's actually the largest watershed in the United States. It collects water from the Rocky Mountains in the west, all the way to the Appalachian Mountains in the east. So that's why when the river gets down to Louisiana, it is massive. It's miles across. Where up here in Minnesota, it's very small comparatively. Even if you've been to Lake Itasca where it starts, you can walk across the Mississippi River because it's only gathered water from this small amount. But as it flows through the United States, it collects water from many, many different states all across. And it's got huge rivers like the Ohio and the Missouri that flow into it. And so by the time it gets down to Louisiana and the Gulf of Mexico, it has collected a lot of water, and it is huge. Now, here in the metro, if we go back to our local watershed, we've changed our watershed because we don't, in a natural situation, it doesn't have a city. It doesn't have those impermeable surfaces. There's no concrete. There's no roofs and sidewalks and parking lots. So when it rains or the snow melts here in the metro, that water has to go somewhere because it can't soak into all of those impermeable surfaces. And just because we wanted that water to go away, our cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, are about 100 years old. So when they built the cities, they just wanted that water to go away. They didn't want it in their streets, and they wanted it somewhere that they just thought was kind of insignificant. And that, at the time, was the Mississippi River. So when it rains or the snow melts, we now have these drains. They're called storm drains. Some people call them the sewer, but that's actually different. The sewer comes out of our homes and our buildings and is completely separate from this stormwater system. So these drains go from our streets and our sidewalks. All of the water washes into it. They go into huge tubes that are underneath our streets. And if you hadn't guessed already, it empties into the Mississippi River. So there really is no way to clean up what goes down our storm drains before it gets into the river. So that means that we do have to take care of our storm drains and make sure that we only have rain that goes down the storm drain. So to kind of cement this idea in our head, we're gonna watch a little video, and then through the chat and question and answer, we're gonna have a little bit more of a discussion so that we can make sure that we understand why it is important to keep our storm drains clean. So here we go.
I've got to tell you that it's not easy getting by these days. Follow me for the next few minutes and I'll tell you. Hello? Hey, buddy, not the flea bag. I'm down here. Freddy the Frog's my name. Let me tell you why life's so tough for frogs like me, as well as other critters in the water. And I'll share with you some things you can do to help keep the environment healthy and happy for everyone. We're sensitive to even the smallest changes in habitat. That's why some scientists call frogs a bioindicator, meaning that by watching us, they can tell how clean and safe the environment is. It's bad. In many places, we're in trouble. The frog population is decreasing, and many are born with deformities. Researchers believe it's because of unwelcome changes in our habitat. It's starting to rain. I usually love the water, but not during and after a storm. There are things that some humans do to our waterways that make me happy mad. Every time it rains, we have to take cover. Water flowing into our lakes, rivers, and streams is loaded with pollution. Humans call it stormwater runoff. I call it a mess. And it's one of the main sources of water pollution these days. So I'm guessing that about now, you're asking yourself, what is stormwater, aren't you? I thought so. Often, when it rains, there's too much water to just soak into the ground. In the neighborhood, it could mean that extra water flowing from our yards and parks to nearby lakes, creeks, or rivers. In the city, there's just too much pavement, and the rain flows down sidewalks, streets, and parking lots. All of this extra water has to be moved along by specially built stormwater drains. And remember, all of the water that flows through it ends up where I live. And believe me, it can be gross. It's not just natural rainwater. Stormwater runoff can be filled with all sorts of nasty things. Do you think our streets are clean? When water flows down the street, it collects oil, gas, and trash. What about our yards? Are they clean? Does your family use pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers? If so, when it rains or when you water your yard, these chemicals flow with the water down the street to a storm drain. Even dirt, leaves, and lawn clippings that flow into the storm drain can make our life miserable. When they decompose in water, they use up valuable oxygen that fish need to survive. And of course, there's the dog doo too. It can get into storm drains as well. How would you like to take a bath with dog poop? I do not. So do the right thing. Please pick up after your dog. It's one of the things you can do to make my home and your world healthier for everyone. But don't stop there. Here are more ways you can help. Pick up dead leaves and excess grass clippings. Never leave them on the street, sidewalk, or driveway. Put them back in your yard for nutrients. Or even better, learn how to start a compost pile. Using compost improves your yard or garden soil and requires less water. Read the instructions carefully when using lawn chemicals, and use only what you need. When you use too much, those chemicals can end up in stormwater as well. What about your vehicles? Do they cause any pollution? Any leak on the pavement can cause toxic chemicals to go into our waterways. So make sure you fix any leaks and clean up your driveway with a proper absorbent. Stormwater Quiz is brought to you by Our Good Bugs. Quit using polluting pesticide and let Our Good Bugs, such as ladybugs and praying mantis, knock out other bugs. They are nature's answer to controlling pests.
Hi there, I'm Al Croker, and it's time to play Stormwater Quiz. First question, which of the following can you safely pour into the storm drain? Is it A, motor oil, B, chemicals, or C, none of the above? If you guess C, you're absolutely right. Remember, absolutely nothing is supposed to go into the storm drain except rainwater. Next question. True or false? It's perfectly okay to blow your leaves and grass clippings onto the street. A. True. B. False. If you guessed true, you're absolutely wrong. When yard waste decomposes in the water, it can use up oxygen needed by frogs and other aquatic life. Question 3. Where should you wash your automobile? A. Your driveway. B. The street. C. Commercial car wash. If you guess C, you're correct. When you wash your vehicle, chemicals, dirt, and oil go down the street to a storm drain. Remember, only rain should go down the storm drain. Thank you for playing our Stormwater Quiz. I'm Al Croker.
I hope you were able to learn something about stormwater runoff today and why it can be such a bad thing. It's a major source of water pollution and can endanger us frogs and other water creatures. Remember that there's things your family can do to help, like not dumping anything into the storm drains, picking up trash, by not applying any chemicals before it rains, or use natural alternatives to chemicals. Cleaning up doggy poo, that's something that you can do too. Please take what you learned today and share it with everyone you know. Tell them why it is so important to follow these simple steps. And if everyone does their part, it will go a long way to reduce water pollution and make our planet a much better place to live.
All right. So there was a couple of things that were mentioned in the video of what can go down the storm drain. And I bet you have seen a whole lot of other things on our streets or sidewalks that you could see would go down the storm drain and cause some problems in our Mississippi River. So I am actually going to stop sharing. And if you could type in the question and answer piece or the chat, guess some of the things that, in addition to water, would go down our storm drain. Ooh, I've got dead leaves. Nice. Yes, absolutely. So here I have got a couple of jars, right? It is a clean jar with clean water in it. And then we put leaves in the jar so we could see what would happen to our water. Now I'll try to shine a light on it so we can see that it is not really all that clear anymore. We've got the leaves down at the bottom and it's kind of dirty, dark color to our water. Now, the video did talk a little bit about it, but it's not so much that leaves get into our water because they are natural. And there's going to be some leaves that fall into the water anyway because the trees grow near the river. But it's the amount of leaves. It's the fact that now if leaves fall in the street or in on somebody's driveway or sidewalk, that those leaves can go down the storm drain and they have a direct line from that street to the river, even if they're miles away from the river. And when they start to decompose, I think the video mentioned that it steals all the oxygen from the water. So our fish, our fish, the wildlife that live in the water don't have enough oxygen to breathe. Good one. Okay, so other ones I see are grass clippings, very much like leaves. Yes. We have the same problem here as leaves, right? You can see it's darker. Grass clippings are a bigger problem in the spring and summer because everybody's cutting their grass. And leaves are a bigger problem that in the fall, like right now, when sometimes I even see people raking their leaves into the street, which is not something that should be happening. Rather than mulching them, composting them, putting in those compostable bags and bringing them to a mulch site. There's so many other things that you can do with leaves. I put them on my garden to protect the plants. So there's a lot of things rather than raking them into the street. So good one. Let's see, other things I see.
Questions about, can leaves clog the drain?
Oh, very good. Yes, that is another problem with leaves. Good call. We do have a program here in the Metro. It's called Adopt a Drain, and that encourages people to sign up and make sure that those drains are kept clean. And that is one of the big things that people collect from drains is leaves, because yes, they can clog up the drains on the street. Absolutely. All right, let's see. I saw somebody a little bit ago said candy wrappers. I've seen some things like plastics and cups. Absolutely.
Kate,
Yes.
there's another question. Let me jump in and ask you this one.
Oh, sure.
Another participant, Nico, has a question about, is it bad for tiny gravel to go down the drain?
Oh, we will get to that. So hold on to that question. I will answer that in a minute. How about that? It is a very good question. And let's see, we'll steal this one. So back to, our trash. So I'm in an office right now. So we made the jar with all the trash in it to have a lot of paper. There's like a pen in there. There's a couple of plastic things, but trash can really cause a problem, both for our wildlife, because they don't know the difference between a trash and a bug. You know, it could be a small glittery piece of candy wrapper that looks a lot like a bug or a fish. And so they're going to eat both. And so they do that, they can't digest the trash. So it does accumulate in their stomach. And sometimes they have a full stomach of garbage and they starve. So that's really hard on our wildlife to have lots of trash in our water. I've also heard that anytime we have little cups of water, so it could be in a can, it could be in a cup, it could be in a wrapper that kind of formed a little, place to hold water, we get extra mosquitoes. So yes, trash, a big problem for our water, absolutely. Ooh, lots of people know where their storm drain is. Very nice.
Kate, another question. How much per year do drains get clogged? Lauren would like to know that.
How much per year do drains get clogged? Oh, this might not answer your question because I don't quite understand it, but I would say that fall is the worst time for drains to get clogged because all of the leaves. And, you know, if somebody was clearing that out, I'd say 2 or 3 times. Because, you know, you think you rake up all your leaves and then there's some from another tree somewhere that blows in. If that's just left there, then it tends to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And then the big machines from the cities have to come down the streets and clean the streets. And sometimes even the city workers who pay attention to the storm drains and make sure that that system is all working have to come out and specifically clean out a storm drain because it is so full of stuff. Yeah, good question. All right, so somebody asked about gravel, unless we have another question. I'm kind of looking at the chat. So Paula, you're gonna have to jump in and see a good question.
Yep, I see a couple of things about gravel. So Jacob's driveway, excuse me, Jacob's driveway is gravel, and he's wondering if that's bad.
Oh, good question. So dirt, or we could say gravel, is a problem for our waters. And you can see this is kind of, I don't know if that flashlight's helping, but it's kind of clear on the top, and then the dirt or the gravel is all down here. But this has been sitting on a table for a day or so. So if I shake it up as if the river was flowing, now we get something that looks like this. Okay, and we really can't see anything through that. It is very, very cloudy, very dark colored water. If it's just small pieces of gravel and it's not a fast flowing stream or river that you have, you know, your storm drain flowing into, that gravel will settle to the bottom. And you'd think, you know, if we get enough gravel, it could fill it up. So it would make a shallower stream. But if there's a lot of dirt that's going into our water, then of course we have a problem that we can't see through it. So fish, small mammals who are trying to catch food can't see through it. They get their gills all clogged up. Plants get covered with dirt, so they can't photosynthesize very well. But then also, we figured this out only a couple years ago. With our darker water, we're getting hot water because it absorbs that heat from our sunlight now. So in regards to Jacob's driveway, I would say take a look at your driveway. Is the gravel washing into a storm drain? Is it a lot? Like, do you have to keep adding more gravel onto your driveway because it's washing away? Or does it just kind of stay there and the gravel doesn't really go down the drain? So if it goes down the drain, it could very slightly be causing an issue, but if it stays there, you're good. It's maybe even catches some things that would have gone down the drain if you had a paved driveway. So, oh, Jacob says it stays there. So fantastic. No problem that you have a gravel driveway. Okay. I have, let's see. How best to clean a storm drain? Oh, that's a good question. I've heard that the little tiny rakes that you get for like people who are 3-5 years old to go play in the yard with work really well for cleaning out a storm drain. I also think some garden tools, like if it's really kind of stuck in there, like a trowel or something like that could be handy. But you are going to want to make sure you wear gloves and are very careful because there can be some crazy stuff in there. Okay. Let's.
Talking about crazy stuff, Kate.
Yeah. Well, you know, think of all the trash, all different kinds.
There was a dead raccoon in his storm drain recently.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And you wouldn't want to touch that without gloves on. You probably wouldn't want to touch that at all. It's not a terrible, there's not enough roadkill or dead animals that cause a pollution problem. So I wouldn't worry about that, but also that'd be awful to clean out. But then also think, you know, there could be super careful, always bring an adult if you're gonna do this, because, you know, there could be things like glass, there could be sharp metal, like you really wanna be very careful and always have a grown-up. I have got a couple of other things. I know at least 2 of them were mentioned in the video. And then that video was made for a city in the South. So I've got a couple of things that maybe they didn't think of that we put on our streets and our sidewalks that can go down a storm drain and cause some big problems for our water quality. Let's see, do I have any more guesses? Oh, yes. All right. Mrs. Wood's class got the tricky one. Excellent. We use a lot of salt in the winter to keep our roads safe to drive on. And I don't want to say that I don't like safe roads, because I certainly do, but we just use way too much salt. Now, this is not actually salt in here, because when you put salt in water, it dissolves and you can't see it, right? So this is food coloring, but it's a good example because salt doesn't just like stay at the bottom or at the top. It really goes all throughout our water. And one teaspoon, like you eat the spoon you might eat your cereal with in the morning, that can pollute a 5-gallon bucket of water, and it permanently pollutes it. We don't have a way of getting that back out. So like, you could go down to the river and pick up bottles and wrappers that went through the storm drain and are now in the river, and you could pick up that bottle and it would no longer be in the river. You can't get salt out of the water like that. Now, big problem with salt is that we live in the middle of the country, really far from the ocean, so we're not supposed to have salty water. Our water is what we call fresh water, and it's not salty. So our plants and animals are adapted to live in fresh water. So they can't tolerate salt. But then also it erodes concrete and asphalt quickly. Well, I shouldn't say quickly, quicker. So if we build something and say that should be good for 50 years, if we have a lot of salt in our water, it might not be good for 50 years. We might have to replace it in 45 or 40 years. So it does have an impact on the things that we build. So yes, salt is a huge problem for us. And at this point, there's a couple of alternatives of ways we can keep our roads safe, but there's nothing that works amazingly well and protects our environment. So that's the balance. We need something that does both. Good job. Let's see. I saw a couple of questions. Oh, what's the best thing to do if you see someone putting stuff on the street? You mean that's not supposed to go down the storm drain, I'm guessing. I understand that it can be difficult to talk to somebody. So if you are not comfortable with that, then you could ask an adult to go talk to them because you have the information, so you could share the information. There's a lot of programs in most cities that you can volunteer for, so you could stencil the storm drain and pass out information. A lot of cities have little flyers that we can leave on people's homes. A lot of cities will put information in the newsletter about how it's important to keep your storm drain clean. So that is another option. You could maybe drop your copy of the newsletter off at their house again or something like that. But if you are comfortable talking to them, sometime with an adult, always, again, it's good to have an adult, then sometimes just having a conversation is the best way, because often the problem is that people don't know where the storm drain goes. It's not that they want to pollute our water, it's just that they think it goes somewhere that doesn't cause a problem. So, good question. Right.
Kate, did you see that Jax has a question? He's really wondering about bird feathers and animal fur. Are those things bad for the water?
Oh, interesting. Not to the level that we are thinking of. So those are natural, just like our leaves and grass are natural, but we don't have as much of those like fur and feathers and things going into the water as we do leaves and grass. So the animals that live in the water, even from our large fish to even like little itty bitty animals that we can't see, they will decompose those, they will eat those. So it doesn't cause a giant problem. We include leaves and grass because so much goes into the water that we have a huge problem with those. But no, we don't have as enough feathers or fur that go into the water that cause a pollution problem. So, good question though. I have got 3 more jars, well, 2 jars and an example of things that cause water pollution because they go down the drain. Does anybody have an idea what those might be? I will throw this hint out. One of them, well, think of the reason we have parking lots and streets. Yes, Cooper got it. Very nice. Oil and gas from our cars, right? So again, this is olive oil, so it's not the gas that we have in our cars, but it's one I can safely put in a jar. Right, and then we've got the water. So if you didn't know, oil and gas float on water, right? You can figure out a lot more about that, about densities and things like that, but they don't mix. Even if I shook this bottle up, the oil would again float to the top, right? So we have this layer of oil. Think about any time you've seen a news piece about an oil spill. It's all this oil floating on top of the water. Or if you've seen a rainbow on the sidewalk or on the street next to a sidewalk or in the parking lot, that is from oil and gas leaking out of somebody's car. And that rainbow is the little layer of oil that is floating on top of water in the parking lot. I was really sad to hear about that when I was little, because I really, really liked rainbows and was super excited whenever I saw one of those. And it turns out it's not good. So all of that oil goes down the storm drain, ends up as a floating layer in our water, which is then a layer of oil that fish have to go through if they want to catch a bug that's out of the water, or birds go through if they want to catch a fish that is in the water. It also causes a problem that the sunlight can't get down to the plants that are in the water as easily. So the plants have a hard time if there's oil on the water. Now, I saw Benjamin had a great question about that. The water that goes down the sink, does it go to a river? Good question. No. So we have two different systems. We've got our sewer system, which takes the water from our sinks, our showers, our laundry, our dishwasher, and yes, our toilets. And it all goes to the wastewater treatment plants, where it is cleaned up before the water part goes back into the river. So that is separate. This is the snow melt, the rainwater that falls on our roofs, our streets, our sidewalks, that impermeable surface. And then to make sure that we don't end up with a lake in our parking lots and our streets, we made those storm drains, and those drains go directly to the river. Now, I will say that there are some places where we can change that. And sometimes those storm drains now water the plants on the side of the street, or go into a rain garden, which we saw a picture of earlier, which is a permeable surface. It lets the water infiltrate, soak in, and then the pollution stays there rather than goes into our river. So, very good question. Yes. Okay, I've got two more. One is kind of like trash, but you could say it was like trash, but it is so bad. It is tied with salt for the worst thing that goes down our storm drains from a metro area. So think of that. It's very small. It's very light. So it's easily washed into a storm drain. There are thousands that go down drains every day. And it's a bad habit that some people have. Anybody write in the chat and guess what that is? Yes. Right. Excellent. So cigarettes and salt are the two worst things that are coming out of our metro area. They're the worst pollutants that go down our storm drains. The others are pretty bad too, but these are the worst. I'll try to shine my flashlight on this again, but it's so dark and polluted, it doesn't really shine through. It's the little bit that's left over after somebody finishes a cigarette. Think of all the times you've seen somebody throw that out a car window, drop it on the sidewalk, kind of throw it in the direction of a trash can, but it doesn't really make it there. Those easily go down a storm drain. The paper that is around the cigarette does decompose, but then think now that there's all that stuff that was in the cigarette that's now in our water, right? And that includes a little piece called a filter, and it takes a very, very, very long time for that filter to break down. There's still ongoing research for how long, but I've seen numbers anywhere from 10 years or so up to 100 years. So nobody's really sure yet, but yes, really bad. Right. And let's see, I saw another question. Does the rainwater go under the road? So once it goes into a storm drain, those drains go to big pipes that do run underneath our streets. So I guess you could say yes, but there's all kinds of pipes and cables and all sorts of stuff that are under our streets. And some of those pipes are storm drain pipes. So yes. I know it has been a while since we watched that little video clip, but there was somebody in that video clip that was causing a lot of pollution. Does anybody remember what it was? Yes. Oh, lots of people got it. Absolutely. So I'm not going to put dog poop in a jar, but I do have some fake dog poop, right? It's actually pretty realistic. I think we got it at a joke shop. So there you go. But yes, if you have ever been to your favorite beach and suddenly it's closed due to a high bacteria count, often that is from either dog poop or geese also cause a big problem, but their poop. Both dogs and geese have a lot of bacteria in their digestive system that makes us very, very sick. So if we have a lot of geese or a lot of people not picking up after their dogs, it can cause a really big problem. So yes, good job, everybody. Let's see, I am going to go back to sharing my screen unless anybody has, let's see, is there a good way to get the stuff under the storm drain? Unfortunately, no. That's where you have to call the city and say, hey, I've got a storm drain that has a lot of stuff in it. Can you have the people with the big machine come out and clean it out? And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. If it's really bad, you can take a picture of it and ask your grown-up to send it to the city so they know how bad it is. But once it goes down that grate, you and I can't get it. We need the professionals to do it. Good question. All right. Let's see, well, I'm gonna go back to, here we go. All right. Oh, there we go. So we talked about all of those different things that can go down a storm drain. I will also say there are a lot more that we didn't talk about. Things like fertilizer and chemicals we might put on our yards. Sometimes there's things from big factories, although that's not as much of a problem anymore. So I'm sure you can think of a lot of things that can go down a storm drain and cause some problems. So, all right. So we'd already talked a little bit about what we can do to keep our storm drains clean. This group of folks is helping us out doing one of those activities that I talked about. They are stenciling a storm drain, which if you're in St. Paul, we are the folks to talk to about that, but most cities in the metro area have a stenciling program, or your watershed district does. So I would contact your local city or watershed district if you're interested in doing something like this. I also mentioned the Adopt a Storm Drain program. So that is run all across the metro as well. And they are out, there is an adult they're just taking the photo. So they're out as a group, cleaning up storm drains and sharing information with people in this neighborhood about why it's important to keep your storm drain clean. So, yes. All right. Now, thank you from me. And I loved all of the questions that you gave me, but now I have a couple of questions for you. And allow panelists to vote. So here you go. We got a couple of people, so I know it worked. All right, we've got 35 of our 49 voting. Give folks another 30 seconds or so. Okay. Wrap it up. Vote if you're going to. Excellent. All right. So most people recognize that. Let's see if I do this. Can I do that? I think so. If you can see it. Most people remembered that road salt is the worst thing that goes down our drain here in the metro. It is tied with cigarettes, so those two are the top. The others are definitely problems, no doubt about that. All right, here is the next one. Okay, does anyone remember this? It's a little bit tricky. Oh, looks like most people have voted. So get your answers in the next couple of seconds. And excellent. All right, ending poll. Fantastic. Most people remembered that just 1 teaspoon of salt pollutes 5 gallons. Yes, that is another reason why salt is such a big problem. It pollutes, just a little bit pollutes a lot of water. Right. And here is our third question. Ooh, people are finding that one harder. All right, now here we go. Ooh, very nice. Okay. Looks like most people have voted. If you haven't, get your vote in the next 10 seconds or so. All right, ending this one. Okay, so this one was harder to remember, but yes, too much dirt actually does all of these things. It makes the water cloudy, so fish can't find food, and plants have a hard time getting the sunlight they need to grow. But since it's dark, it also heats the water up. So it's all of the above. All right, nice job. Now, I did see in the chat one quick question that I think is a great one to cover. Can you ask the city to bring the road cleaner to come if there's leaves and other bad stuff? The short answer is yes. So you can certainly ask them. In the city I live, I've had a great response from the city anytime I say that there's a clogged drain or there's, the salt truck just dumped a lot of salt in the street. They have come to clean it up. You can always ask. I won't guarantee that they will come, but you can always ask. And there's usually a phone number or a email address on their website that you can send that information to. So good one. Paula, are you seeing any other questions that we should cover?
I think that we've covered a couple of the questions that are still there yet, but there was one question I thought maybe you should talk about, and that is, I'm sorry, I need to find it again. So Lauren and her class took a virtual field trip to 9 Mile Creek, and they said that there's gravel there that takes in the water. Can you talk about that a little bit? Do you know something about that?
That takes in the water. I don't know specifically what they're referring to, but in general, if there's gravel or let's say some permeable material, so it could be dirt, it could be a rain garden, it could be gravel, and water flows through it, then that does catch a lot of the pollution that we put in water. So if water with oil in it flows through dirt that has little microorganisms, so bugs that we can't see, some of those actually will eat the oil and get it out of the water. So it might be something like that. Unfortunately, we can do that in a, it's not small, it's not tiny, but it is a smaller situation when you've got the entire metro, then that is, it's a bigger situation, or the city of St. Paul or Minneapolis, it's harder to figure out. But like I mentioned, some storm drains have been changed so they no longer go to the river. And somebody said, why not put rock filters in the drains? So when we change the drains, sometimes the water goes to something like a rock filter, or there's rain gardens that the storm drains go to. If we just dumped a bunch of rocks down the storm drain, the pipes that go to the river are big enough that all of the rocks would end up in the river. So we are slowly changing how our storm drains are structured, or what they look like, where they go, but it is going to take a while. So good questions. Yeah. Anything else? Well, okay. If classrooms or anything do have further questions, our website is FMR, as in Friends of the Mississippi River, FMR.org, and you can find my information on the website and email me your questions. I'd be happy to answer them. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Does that wrap up your presentation? Just checking.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Then what I would like to remind all of you that well, first, thank you so much for attending the Children's Water Festival presentation today, Down the Dirty Drain. And you'll see an evaluation when this class is over. And we'd sure like it if you could just take a few minutes to complete that, just a couple of questions, and then you can submit that to us. And again, be sure to look over the website, metrocwf.org. There may be some other classes that, or maybe some videos or some lesson plans that you might like to take a look at. And then there's that resources webpage for even more water related fun stuff. So thank you so much for attending. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.